fellowship hall afterwards. But this is Jesus calming the storm, and the beautiful gospel we have for us today. And then a hymn that relates to that, the Navy hymn, Eternal Father, strong to save, for those in peril on the sea. And so let's hear the gospel first. Please stand on page 5. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples, immediately. This is a continuation of last Sunday's gospel. Last Sunday was Jesus hearing that John the Baptist had been killed, beheaded. And so we often do, we want to be alone at a time like that. So we go off to a wilderness, except the people knew where he was going. They followed him, and a crowd gathered. And the gospel last week said he had compassion on the crowds because they're like sheep without a shepherd. And so he ministered, healing all day, sharing, speaking. And then what happened, it got to be evening, and the disciples say, hey, you know, it's getting late. How about dismissing the crowd, letting them go home? And because we're out here in the wilderness, no food. And what did Jesus say? Compassion for them, not just to heal their bodies, their illnesses and such, but he says, you feed them, you give them something to eat. And that's where the miracle happened of taking a small lunch of 2 fish, smoked fish, prepared fish, and then 5 loaves of some kind. And that was enough to feed 5,000 people with leftovers. That was the first record of leftovers. We've been eating leftovers ever since. I think we have leftovers more often than we have real food at our house. But, okay, back to the story here. So that's when it says immediately, this is, Jesus said, okay, you go back across. Get in the boat, go back across the sea, and I'll catch up with you later. Got to be night, they're on the Sea of Galilee, storm comes up, and they're being swamped and all, and they see a ghost coming across the water. And that's where today's story begins. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, so this is all night, they're out in this rough sea. Early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when Peter noticed the strong wind, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The glorious gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. Many ways of drowning.